you know what you're talking about?
Sorry?
We're now ready
You know what you're
to
talking about?
No.
launch into the session entitled Synergy
worse
Plus.
than you.
I'm
You
going
are
to
the best for that.
turn things over to
What you did
Roland to
yesterday
introduce
was very interesting.
our panel for this discussion, which is a very important one, an interesting one, and I'm sure everyone will have some ideas about it, and I hope you're happy to share them with the rest of us. So Roland, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jay. And what I will do is I will pass it right on to our panelists. Rob, can you very briefly tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yes, if I was to describe myself, I'm a master examiner in skydiving and a program developer. I'm one of the initial developers from the AFF program back in '79 when Kenny Coleman was doing it. So I'm one of the longest lasting examiners that are still working from that era. In 1994, Skydive University, my company, put together a program called ISP, Integrated Student Program. A lot of people think that's a USB program, but it's actually a Skydive University program. And it was our first attempt to use a wind tunnel in training. We used West Tennessee Forge. We quickly realized that the technology at that time was not sufficient. The big suits and the conditions in the wind tunnel just was not close enough to actual free fall, so we abandoned it. 1997, I had an opportunity to work in Fort Bragg Tunnel as a subcontractor for a four-way team with Luxembourg. They got a military award from the government to actually use 20 hours. So it was my first exposure using a real wind tunnel with real speed. And they give us 5 hours on the first day, which is mind-blowing when you don't know how to fly in a wind tunnel. And I learned a lot. The Golden Knights come in with us, and I really learned a lot about what you can do with a wind tunnel. Fast forward, 1998, meet a gentleman in Paris Valley, Bill Kitchen. Of course, people that know SkyVenture history understand that Bill Kitchen is the founder and the creator of SkyVenture. He asked me a question, if I build it, can we use it as a freefall trainer? My answer was, if you can build it so that we can use our regular suits, maybe even put lead on, and airflow's reasonably clean, I said, absolutely, it would work. We made an agreement before the wind tunnel was built that Skydive University would run and create a wind tunnel AFF program so that we'd use it as basic training tool. I went to USVA, I pitched a program, which they accepted on a waiver. They accepted or had the waiver issued to me before SkyVenture was finished construction. And as fast as that wind tunnel opened in 1999, Skydive University started running their first students out of the wind tunnel using 20 minutes of wind tunnel time and a 4-jump program, but followed by 3 coach jumps mandatory. And so my involvement right here today is to really talk about the, I guess, synergies, what this is, but the relationship between the drop zones and the wind tunnel and the things we've learned over the years of how that can be to our advantage, and also what we need to do to make it work, because it is a special circumstance. That's
Rob has a video.
The introduction.
No, let's introduce. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Rob, and it was a pleasure that you really decided on this spot to come over here and make this panel here. Great. Now, when I had this parachute center many years ago, it was my dream to have a wind tunnel here. We even went to the States. We looked at the options available there. We had to discard it because we didn't have the money, quite simply. But it wasn't really state of the art at the time. We were talking 1987. Now, a few years later, quite a few years later, the people who are running the parachute center now, they have what I consider the optimum setup for teaching skydiving in all its forms, shapes, and I would like you, Juli, the managing director, and the sporting director, Richie, tell us a little bit about your programs, Skydive Emporia Brava, and Tunnel Synergies.
You want me to start? Yeah. Okay. From our point of view, obviously, it's a great synergy. It helped us a lot. It generates much more value in the location itself. At the beginning, when you have a new company coming and building a new tunnel, drop zone might think, oh wow, we might lose slots in the planes. But in the long term, if properly driven, that generates an excellent synergy in the sense that the value of the location, so you can have the people, it's a bit what Simon Ward was saying yesterday, you have to, its own industry has got its own market, but they got several connections that you transfer, so one captures the new customers, and in some point you transfer to each other. So all this, it generates a more interesting location, more people coming, and you get a bigger market at the end. On the point of view of the technical part, obviously it's a great training tool for sites from teams, and for FFs, obviously. The FFs, but Richie will explain you much deeper. But all this, at the end, technically, obviously, that gives you a new horizon of possibilities to offer to the people. So looking from the point of view of the drop zone has been a big change, a step ahead. And Richie will explain you more about the synergy, what we use technically for teaching students, for example, teaching advanced skydivers for advanced training.
Yeah, I'd just like to agree with Juli on that. It's our tunnel that we have next door to us, and using the tunnel to assist, mainly speaking about the AFF program and beginner skydivers, is just extraordinary. We've been using it now for 3 full seasons, which represents around 250 full course students a year, going through to at least finishing their AFF, if not getting to A license level. And we've been using that with enormous success. In the beginning, the first year, we were using parallel the old AFF program, in addition with what we call AFF Plus, which is let's call it Tunnel AFF. It was amazing, and we were selling them both. And in the end, today we don't do the other one at all, unless there is no tunnel available, and then by legality we have to do the original, or let's say traditional AFF. But I mean, just for example, I think we would probably have reduced our repetition levels during the course of AFF by up to 80%. We probably repeat some tunnel, because we use that as let's say a little stop point to test the people, obviously. So that's the first point, that you're testing the person apart from the ground school itself. And we have to repeat tunnel a few times to get somebody to the ability, and even people take that point to step out because they say it's not for them, which is great, because we don't want anybody in the air that shouldn't be there. We have a tandem in our course as well, but the tunnel has produced this security within the AFF that's on another level. Not to mention what a finished AFF student is today. I think it's better than what it was before, and that's for sure. And these people then, any spare time they have or money, they're going to the tunnel to improve their skills and have this base that's extraordinary for that basic safety, you know, even if it's just for stability during deployment, which is, in the end, a big one.
David, does the FFP have an official position on endorsing tunnel to substitute, let's say, AFF levels, or is there any specific program that combines the 2 elements, wind tunnel and accelerated freefall training?
You know, it was not really easy at the beginning. I think it was the same in many countries. When we had indoor coming, there were political choice to do. For most of national aero clubs, they have to wonder, do we get them with us, or do we split from them? And the decision from the French Federation, of course, was to get indoor being part of the federation. And you know the system in France, we are working, the federations are working for the French government. They have a delegation of power. And of course, the goal was to get indoor with us because it was also a gate for Olympics. And in France, there is two kind of categories. There is two categories of sports: the Olympic ones that get big foundations from the state, and the others that get less. So, of course, for the French Federation, indoor would have to be part of the sport. But on the other hand, federation like ours was an association from territories, and indoor industry is not association, it's private, it's corporations. So it's not the same people that are elected the bureau. So how can explain to people that are from the skydiving, from the outdoor skydiving, that part of the money will be spent into indoor that is not their skydiving. So this was a problem. And of course, we have seen at the beginning a small and then a big part of the money that was spent to airplane, to outdoor, that was then spent indoor. And you know the money is not, the amount is defined, you know, when you spend here, you cannot anymore spend it. If you have bad weather on one day and then you go make your money in the indoor, this won't be a slot anymore. So for us, in terms of development, we are wondering now how we could do in the future to have more development from the indoor to the outdoor, having more and more people skydiving, subscribing, and jumping. We need more time because a good question would be, for instance, to check what about this young French team that was world champion in junior information skydiving 2 or 3 years ago? Will they be one day world champion from outdoor in a plane or not? Will we have a transfer between in and outdoor? This is kind of things we are wondering in terms of synergy. Of course, the synergy about interest for skills, I think it's in evidence. We are going to use the indoor flight to try to organize IFF for disabled people.
You will be talking about this afternoon?
Yes, but this program is a little different than the one I will talk about this afternoon. What I'm talking about here is just a small aspect. Mm-hmm. It's how can we make disabled people being able to have skills for free fall, so that he could be maybe one day jump alone. And it's not easy, but with the wind tunnel, we hope to be able to have him learning how to go back and face to the ground, and to train on opening mechanism. And this could be a part of the program. Of course, we need also to solve the canopy problems. If you cut away, it's not the same canopy because we are working on hybrid canopies. So this is just an example of what kind of skills aspects can bring indoor to outdoor.
Maybe I made a little bit of a mistake in the way I worded it. We want to keep the focus on this really synergetic relationship in the areas of training students, maybe to the extent beyond, but emphasis very specifically, I would say, to start out, AFF. Have you ever in your time as an operator in the UK, worked with the BPA on creating a system that would combine indoor and outdoor?
Of course.
First of all, I would like to say, Rob Laidlaw, we are not worthy. We are in the presence of greatness. And for those who don't know, Rob Laidlaw and tunnelcamp.com are the two things that kick-started ProFlyers in this wind tunnel industry. Without you guys, there probably wouldn't have been a wind tunnel industry. Let's hear it.
Well, thank you very much.
Now, Rob, what have you been doing that there are still so many drop zones out there who still think that the wind tunnel industry is a pariah?
Right.
So why are there so many drop zones who still think we're going to eat their lunch?
Right.
When in fact, the synergy between indoor skydiving and outdoor skydiving is immense, and it's fantastic. Hearing the word politics really worries me. We shouldn't have any politics. It's great to see the APF are here, come here all the way from Australia just to learn. We did programs with the BPA. I've never managed them to get them to do what the Canadian Sport Association have done, which was to make it part of AFF for a certain while. I don't know if that's still the case, but those are the sorts of things that we have to do. And without indoor skydiving at the moment, skydiving would be at that trajectory and skill level. And I don't think we're feeding a lot of new customers, but we're feeding the skill level. And you just look at the whole difference in skydiving. And I'd also like to ask the question, what are we getting back from skydiving? What's skydiving putting into the wind tunnel industry, apart from ProFlyer hours, of which they do a lot. But that's natural because we are that simulator. So there's lots of synergies.
Okay, the debate is open, and I think you're the man right now to have this all sorted out.
So while I expand on this, I would like to open up the first clip, which is the wind tunnel clip.
Can we do clip number one?
It's number one. This is what this is. This is about 4.5 minutes of actual working with non-skydivers. So people, customers off the street that are just learning to fly for the first time, to prepare them for their first skydives. I'm not going to comment much about the program, what's happening behind me right now. I'm just going to let you see the samples of the drills. This is not all the drills we do in 20 minutes, but it's just showing you where we're going with the students to prep them for the first jump, which is not AFF. What we're focusing on is body flight. The better we can get them to fly in 20 minutes, the better they're going to do on an AFF jump. So we're not focusing on dive flow, altimeter checks, and what I see a lot of AFF instructors do when they bring students to the tunnel. We look at that as a waste of opportunity. So this is body flight training. And I got several different examples of several students here going through the 20-minute program. Now, last February, I spoke in Dallas on a topic that was this. It was benefits of the wind tunnel for your drop zone in AFF was the topic. And at the end of the presentation, we asked one simple question. And this is all we had to ask was one question. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you use the wind tunnel for your operation? Why wouldn't you use the wind tunnel to accelerate your students? It's a fantastic program. It is the best in the world, by far. The questions that we got back, well, first, as Jérôme spoke, well, it's taking money away from the drop zone. Fair enough. However, we work on drop zones and have problems with weather. Those students come out weekend after weekend, and what's happening is they're losing interest. So how many students do you have that actually stopped coming out because of weather? They just lost interest because they could never get that first jump. But if you had an option that you could take them back to the wind tunnel and keep them current, or what if you didn't have a 7-jump program and you only had a 4-jump program, which is what we have, 1 2-in-1 jump followed by 3 1-in-1 jumps. We don't really need the 2-in-1 jump, but we use that for psychology, not to let them go unstable and exit. I mean, they're still skydiving at 2 miles above the ground, so you have to realize everybody responds to that when you leave an airplane. I don't care how much wind tunnel time you've got. So I can literally take a student for a first jump course in the morning, go to the wind tunnel in the afternoon, show up the next morning into land, and I can finish the AFF program in 1 day. In 1 day. What that does psychologically to the student is they hold themselves different the next morning. They're not a student anymore. They've graduated. They're on to coaching. That creates retention. And that's the key thing here, is what we're trying to do, is build the sport and build the core. The wind tunnel is an excellent thing to help us build that retention. I know we can be stuck in the past about what this is taking money away from the drop zone, but if you lose a customer, you lost the money anyway. If you keep the customer, well, then they continue with coaching. And I strongly encourage everybody does about a 9 or 10 jump coaching program beyond AFF. If you're not thinking that way, you need to start thinking that way. If you really want to make good skydivers, safe skydivers, and retain skydivers. The other thing is, now you keep them for the license. They get a license, they'll buy equipment from you. So if you happen to be equipment selling business in your drop zone, now you've made another sale. Now you add that up and tell me as an operator, did you really lose much money on those couple of 2-in-1 jumps that you sacrificed? Or actually, did you keep a customer, build your core, and you have more money overall, which now bigger core, you don't have a turbine airplane, now you can have a turbine airplane. Maybe you have a turbine airplane, maybe you get 2 turbine airplanes. This is how you build drop zones. This is when I consult drop zones, this is what I tell them how to do it. Other questions, staff. Well, you're taking money away from me. I said, okay, fair enough. Once again, that student quit because of the bad weather. Or, why don't you get involved in the wind tunnel? Because on a rainy day, I take people to the wind tunnel and I actually make pretty good money. So I'm not sitting at home whining because I'm not making any money. I have an actual option where I can go make money anytime I want. So therefore, my work is steady all the time and is not weather dependent. That opened up a lot of eyes where people sort of step back going, that's not a bad answer. So maybe going out and investing in your own flying skills is necessary. I was going to try to freeze right at the end of that last clip, but the thing I wanted to, at the end of that last clip, I wanted to show, if some of you noticed where it stopped, is relationship between the wind tunnel and staff. The wind tunnel is concerned about skydivers coming in there. So this is another thing. Some people are saying, well, we went to certain wind tunnels and we weren't warmly received. Well, you need to be able to handle yourself in the wind tunnel properly for them to trust you. So we have to have a relationship with the staff at the wind tunnel. This is another factor. So if you want to use the wind tunnel, you also have to realize we have to behave in a way that we have our synergy and cooperation. So when I come in here and I'm working with the students, or any of my staff, the wind tunnel instructors are comfortable not to interfere with us. But we earn that right. So we have to make sure that we have our flying skills down. So in that relationship. What it showed at the end of this clip, right at the very end, is the relationship on this with this staff is excellent. Because I'm standing against the glass, and I don't know if you noticed, they're cleaning up at the end of the night on the window. And as I was standing there, they drew angel wings behind me and put a halo over my head. So I don't know if you noticed the last clip on that when it froze. That was a picture. That's a sign of an excellent relationship, working well with the wind tunnel staff and high trust. That's what we have to develop. So these are the questions from the drop zones. And then the questions in the tunnel are, will we see people come in and they don't handle themselves well, they don't handle the students well, the students it's dangerous. I've been in the wind tunnel control room looking at the operator, looking back and forth saying, I think we need to shut this down. We need to turn the airflow off because it's getting crazy. So we have to realize as skydivers, if you want to work in the wind tunnel, then we also have to be able to have our own skills in the wind tunnel, like what you're seeing me here. I can squat, I can stand, I can walk, I can flip on my belly, I can stand back up, I can go over to the student, I can give them signals. And so it takes a certain person to do this. Now, drop zones. Sending people to the wind tunnel. This is now Simon and I, we look at each other here. The wind tunnel staff in most places they're trained are not good trainers for AFF. Their techniques for the tourists, it's a different body position for lower airspeed so they don't fly through the door. We get that, we totally understand what they're doing. However, for us, what we need is a balanced body position mid-range so they can actually learn to fly. So we have a little battle sometimes between technique of getting this happening. So Skydive to Land, as an example, used the wind tunnel staff one time for a Qatar contract and said they would never do that again. They said that the benefit of what the students got out of the tunnel experience wasn't good enough. So we don't like to use solely wind tunnel staff to train our AFF students. On the other half, I see people, that AFF instructors that don't fly in the wind tunnel, they come into the wind tunnel and they try to run with their students, but they don't have a clue what the tool is and what the potential is of the wind tunnel. So they're just doing ridiculous exercises. Like I say, it's just a waste of an opportunity and time and a waste of money. Making them do a million training pulls, look at their altimeter, do a dive flow, sit in an arch, rather than push the skills as you see right here. Maybe if we could go to clip 2.
Can we put the second clip on?
So this will show you a sample of not all the 4 jumps, but just a little sampling of what's happening in free fall in 4 jumps. Our first jump is a release jump in 90-degree turns. So we are skipping levels 1, 2, and 3 in regular AFF. We're going straight to 4, but we're doing what's done on 1, 2, and 3, but we're achieving what needs to be done on 1, 2, and 3, because 1, 2, and 3 in AFF should focus and achieve one thing only, relaxation. And however you do that, is you're doing the right thing. If you're doing anything that's opposing relaxation, you're doing the wrong thing. So the wind tunnel can actually substitute that 1, 2, and 3. 20 minutes of wind tunnel time, that's what we're focusing on. Body skills, flying skills, but relaxing, getting them to fly to the door, getting them to smile, getting them to have a good time. So when the instructors come in and try to work with the students from the wind tunnel point of view and can't fly, or from my point of view, that is not appropriate either. So what we talked about in Dallas, and this was from Nicholas Gummison, from Brad Cole, you remember Brad Cole was speaking with me as well, that it's a special instructor that we have to develop. And so we train our staff in the tunnel, show them the drills, show them our routine, so that we get the end product we want. Other thing that wind tunnel staff will do that we particularly do not like is they want to impress the students. They want to impress the clients, which, as a tourist, that's great. But they're not taking them up in the sky the next day. When we're taking them up in the sky the next day, I need high repetition, very simple things worked on. I don't care about a mantis position. I don't need them to backfly or zip fly. I need fundamentals, and I need 20 minutes of high drilling and high reps to make that happen. And when it's done properly, then we get the student that we can take out the door, we can release that student, they're going to do their 90-degree turns. We've had as many as 11 90-degree turns on the first jump, and as many as 8 or 9 360s on the following jump. So the performances they're getting are pretty awesome, and therefore this is what I see is the true advantage. Flying skills-wise and confidence. Well, you see this person is on his 5th skydive right here, learning body flight. And if you're looking to make his approaches, nice, straight, clean. So that's the mandatory coaching that comes behind. And I just wanted to show a sample of that as what's next.
That's AFF, 7 levels, plus
It's 4 levels plus 3 mandatory coach jumps, but we actually really urge that you do 9 coach jumps. But we will not put anybody on solo until they've done 7 jumps. And that's just canopy control training. So, advantages to the student. Free fall is not a mystery. Stress in free fall is reduced. Because stress is reduced, if they have unusual situations and they have an emergency situation, they're better able to execute those emergency situations. People make mistakes on those type of things when they go over the red line on stress and then do not follow the proper training. If you can keep that stress management within a particular level, they're going to perform better. And the reason everybody says they didn't train canopy control for 30 years, which, sorry, I just call that an excuse, is information overload. But the fact is, I didn't agree with it then. With the wind tunnel now, there's absolutely no justification to use the words information overload, because the skills that have been taught in the wind tunnel are beyond what's happening in the first jumps, except that we can't teach a back loop and a front loop. We do the rolls in the tunnel, half rolls, and sometimes the instructors will say, let them do the full roll. But we let the instructor make that decision, not me. I'll just go with the half roll to stay within the management's rules. So stress is reduced, performance is increased, and therefore opportunity for canopy control training is awesome. So in our program, we have a 25 jump program, 25 different flight planners, and 25 canopy exercises done to the A license, which in USPA terms, they have their B license proficiency card for canopy control. We teach all of that by 25 jumps. So by the time we're finished with somebody with an A license right now, I absolutely can say this with confidence. We have a better able and safer trained skydiver than any other school that I know of right now. And that in big part is because we're starting with the wind tunnel that allows those opportunities. I think I've said my piece.
You certainly did. And what you transmit is exactly what has always distinguished you. You're a passionate man, and I think in this business you have to be passionate. If you do things half-assed, it's usually not going to work. You have thought this through, and let's face it, in the past, tunnel and AFF combinations were used mostly by the military. You had all these crack units that couldn't afford to waste time with weeks on a drop zone and doing it the normal way. They had to go in and out of a country and learn to skydive in 4 days, if possible. And it was done. I've seen it myself. And what we're doing right now is we're working on the civilian side of such programs, and I think this could actually change a lot of things in terms of your appeal to the customer and in terms of the whole training. Your experiences now, obviously, you alluded to it, there is always this little bit of friction. It's money out of my pocket here. I mean, these guys are going to go over there, they're going to spend money, and the situation in Apuria Brava is not the typical one. I mean, there are probably a handful of drop zones in the world that have right adjacent to them a wind tunnel. In most cases, this wind tunnel is owned by the drop zone. Take the Larry Hills, the Paris has it, and I think Rayford has it. Here, it's two completely independent, different companies. And you had to kind of, do certain things to make this exchange and interchange possible. How did that go?
Yeah. Just before coming here, I was thinking about this, how to analyze this. If you analyze it in a point of view of a drop zone itself, you do the SWOT diagram, strength, weakness, opportunities and threats, you have it comes out one picture. If you do that in the location with a wind tunnel, altogether, even if it's not the same company, it changes it completely. So you have much more opportunities, you have much more weakness, and you have a bigger, you open to a bigger attraction for people to come. So I was thinking about this and said, look, that's a point to see it. So imagine a drop zone, you have the problem with the weather, you have the problem with the sunset. The problem is that you get a jump after the sunset or before, having the wind tunnel so people can, for example, teams, that's the standard issue, or sport skydivers. They come here to improve their skills so they can jump, they plan the trip with only one travel to jump from planes, and at night or after sunset, go and fly in the wind tunnel. But on top you have the cross-selling opportunity. So they come here only for jumping, let's imagine, and the weather turns bad and they cannot jump the whole day. So they can always have the opportunity to go there. So all this, it fills the gap, one fills the gap of the other. So in fact, sometimes in some point, we give something to the wind tunnel, and for, what I think it's good, the synergy is great for this. I mean, and also for tandems or for first-timers, at the end, tandems got a lot of selling barriers. So price is one of them because it's quite expensive. and all the selling barriers that somebody that doesn't know anything about skydiving will turn to a place that doesn't know the instructor, and this person will hook him up and throw the guy out of the plane. So that's a big selling barriers. So as an approach, somebody like when a group of people wants to experiment freefall, the ones they want, they can go for tandem Skydive, and many others go for wind tunnel. In fact, we sell a lot of wind tunnel first timers experience on behalf of Window. So all this is it's at the end for us is a win-win.
Richie, from the practical side, I mean, you're the one, he's the marketer, you're the one working the relationship.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to, I mean, Rob said it all, really. I mean, I'd have to agree 100% with all of that. You know, we need to, as an instructor, not try and repeat what we're going to try and do in the sky, in the tunnel. We need to get a student to perform the skills that we're going to need to see from him in the next 25 jumps, and only that. And then, as a tunnel instructor, the relation we have as an AFF instructor in the tunnel, we need to have the basic skills to do exactly what Rob was saying, to stand, walk, fly, and assist the student in those levels, and with the trust of the doormen or the staff from the tunnel, not from window. But for us, it's excellent. We're lucky. We've probably got in the AFF instructor team 4 or 5 of those guys that are wind tunnel instructors as well. But we've also had to win the trust from the tunnel, and it's great. Also, what you said, Rob, about tunnel instructors in general, teaching them AFF, if you just give a student to them, it's not very beneficial in general, let's say. We try and encourage the students, if they do we say in the training, if you do happen to go to the tunnel and do some more time for yourself, tell the people that you're doing the course at least, but we recommend at least try and take one of us so that we can actually get the maximum benefit from that simulator or training aid that we've got called the wind tunnel. So, yeah.
Other than AFF, AFF being the far most important program, it's the entry way into the sport. Could you see other programs that could play off this synergetic relationship?
For sure, and one of the interesting things that we were talking about in how the drop zones occasionally see it quite short-sightedly that they might be losing money. I remember in a previous life I consulted a couple of drop zones, and I would go back to a basic principle, which is a customer lifetime revenue. And if you look at the lifetime revenue for a customer, are you going to extend that even though it may take longer? And I think with what Rob's doing, that shows that you do. And we were looking at the time and the drop-off points of students in particular. I'm sure if I asked here if anybody had given up jumping, gone to a wind tunnel and started jumping again, I'd get at least one hand going up, wouldn't I, Karina? And that's another thing that we're doing with the tunnels. We're bringing out a lot of the old skydivers again who are getting re-energized, and they're learning new skills, new tricks, and getting passion back for the sport. And whilst the rest of us were all summiting here last night and really learning about the business, Karina sloped off and did another jump because it was nice weather. And
she's hooked again.
She's hooked again, and that's because of tunnels. So that synergy is absolutely there all the way through. And for us to try to build those programs, that talks about doing partnerships with the drop zones and with the associations. So the fact that the FFP and the wind tunnels in France have a good relationship is really, really important. Just make sure it's symbiotic. And so all good relationships have to be symbiotic. They can't be controlling. And occasionally elements of that will come in between different organizations. And USPA and BPA in particular both decided that they're not in the business of governing or running the wind tunnel business, but they do work in a symbiotic way with them. But probably not as close as FFP, by the way.
In areas of training.
Yeah.
They're not going to sanction any national teams, but in areas of training.
It's fantastic that the APF have flown all the way over here just for this, to hear this sort of thing, because there's massive opportunity.
One more thing, I mean, to Karina, she's not by herself. We also have Mary Lou. I think Mary Lou was a skydiver we both met in 1980 Zephyr Hills. He took her to a rock and roll concert. Was it Rolling Stones?
Rolling Stones,
And
J Hill
there
should
are,
stay in J
I
Hill.
think, thousands of sleepers out there that would consider coming back. Would consider coming back safely if a program. I think there should be a very specific program. That's what you'd have to do to get back on. And do you have people working on that?
We don't have anybody specifically working on finding old skydivers who, not too crippled to get back in the air, but we. A lot of our marketing is channel marketing, so we will go into all the different channels, and we definitely go into the skydiver market, and that's both, current and old skydivers. So,
Really think that's something that also could be put in place almost overnight. Doesn't take any major investments, and the gratification is tremendous. I mean, look at Karina and look at Mary Lou.
Genuinely believe that if you look at the repeat rates in indoor skydiving, depends where you are, but it's generally in the sort of 10 to 15%.
Higher than in skydiving.
Pardon?
Higher than in
highest skydiving is well below 1%, I think. I'm not sure what it is at the moment. You look at any one tunnel, any one of the UK tunnels does more first-timers than the entire tandem operation of the UK in a year. There's things like that. So I do think there's a huge opportunity of building retention. And one of the ways of building retention, the informational sensory overload that Rob dismisses but acknowledges at the same time, it does exist. And if you've got people going to do a tandem, and there's a tandem program, and you can get that person to come and do just even 2 flights in the tunnel first, they now know they can breathe in free fall. That question, can I breathe in free fall? But they can also bring their families. When their families come, they can watch. And then they can watch the skydive with much more knowledge because they've actually been in free fall inside the tunnel. And I'm sure you're seeing this. You just said that you're taking spectators over and first-timers over to the tunnel first. And I suspect that would have some benefit to retention. You'll probably tell me it doesn't, but I don't know if it does.
I'm completely agree with you. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. And we bought into a drop zone in the UK. It was a complete nightmare, but the drop zone's a pretty tough business. But we did buy into one, and I never got those synergies to work properly. And I think it's partly because the wind tunnel industry, because the mere nature of it, you put out 10 million euros, whatever, you're running this thing like a pretty serious business. It's not like a couple of guys with a mate and a Cessna, which is how a lot of drop zones start before they become as sophisticated as Windor. And sometimes you are dealing with the small drop zones.
Exactly. Now, Rob, probably I think it should be you to wrap all of this up. I think here at in the last few statements, there is potential to further programs, to establishing an even tighter relationship. Give us your assessment of that.
Well, we've been using it in all sorts of different aspects ever since it was built. I mean, I'm talking about just getting customers off the street and how to get them into the air in your drop zone and utilize the wind tunnel. But we're also using it for basic body flight, advanced body flight. Of course, I'm an ex-FS coach for an 8-way, and I'm a world team captain for the large formations. I've used the wind tunnels for big way training. As much as you can't swoop in it, I can teach you just how to crunch your knees and do certain skills. AFF instructor training, we're using it a lot. I know their staff gets really excited when some of this stuff is going on because it gets a little crazy, but we still seem to work pretty well together with it, and they learn rollovers and spin stops. So, and plus then there's this disabled aspect of either working with this disabled or elderly, that I can screen people and I can look at their true potential. Is it possible for them to jump, or we gave it a try, we give it our best shot, and then just have to say, sorry, it's not for you. but we let them try, and at least. So there's
Safely.
Safely. So those are the opportunities that we've seen and utilized.
I think this is all very promising. I think here we have the pioneers in development of programs and then probably in implementing it across corporate lines. It's important that you to find a partner you can trust, whether it be in your case a drop zone or in the case of a drop zone a wind tunnel, and to work towards a common goal. And the common goal, and if we really can agree on that, the common goal should be to take this brand, skydiving, body flying, whatever we want to call it, but like what we do as a brand and try to make it more popular. And then the more entry points you have, the more cohesion you have between the two platforms, the better. So thank you very much for having contributed to this very important panel discussion. We're going to have the number 9 coming up right afterwards. I think you're going to be on again. It's going to be, in Germany they call this the Elefantenrunde. That's when all the heavyweights get on, and where we will talk about the future. All right, thank you very much.
Please,
Yes.
people stay put so we can keep things going rather than taking a break, or if you have to run out, please come back so we don't have to get everybody back in, and we can get geared up for the next one, which will require people putting their mics on. But
thanks a lot.
let's try to stay together. Okay.
It's a pleasure.
The goal of the accelerated freefall course is to create, by the end of it, a safe solo skydiver who can deal with problems as they occur, but is also relaxed enough to enjoy their skydiving in a very safe manner.
It's also new to me. Like, what we're doing is it's kind of, like baby steps. It's an evolution. So I'm excited to see how it goes at the end. But at the moment, as you've seen, it's quite entertaining, yeah.
AFF and AFF Plus are a complete package from start to finish. You will build up a relationship with your instructor for sure. We explain all the normal procedure during a skydive. We also then explain emergency procedure and possible problems that the student could encounter not just during AFF, but as their career in the sport. We practice both in the aircraft mock-up, so we run through the phase for the exit from the plane using a simulator, and also on creepers on the ground, on the little trolleys you see formation teams using for training. And then we go into the wind tunnel and we use that and teach them how to fly their body in the relative wind. The wind tunnel is very, very good for correcting problems when if a student reaches a certain stage in AFF and they have an unsymmetrical body position maybe, or their legs, one is stronger than the other, we can correct this by doing a little more tunnel flying. This is a revelation in skydive learning, and we are going to have a generation of children who can already skydive. They just need to learn to fly their canopies and to exit the airplane really nicely.
I had the AFF course twice. The first one was 15 years ago, and I did 25 jumps, I remember. I do have a lot of memories. I remember that the first jump, or the second jump, or the third jump, I could feel my heart beating, It was like a lot of silence around myself and really intense. I truly think that the wind tunnel should be in all the drop zones. The tunnel gave me, that extra thing.
But the sky is not like the wind tunnel in a way, because we can't turn the sky down, we can't reduce the power of the sky. But during the AFF, a student learns to fly their body in the relative wind at very high speed.
First jump I didn't like the most because I looked down straight away. And And that is just human instinct, but I'm sure everybody would do it. Everyone would lie if they said they didn't do it. So when you're looking down, your body position is just totally out. But come the second jump, and when you finally get that sensation and don't worry about the ground, then you're totally fine. The wind tunnel's perfect for body positioning. It's definitely a lot harder if you were to just go straight to the plane and try and get a position straight away, because there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of other emotions going on when you're in the plane. So when you are having to do it with the tunnel, you're on the ground, it's there, it's simulating the exact same thing. What you do in the tunnel is all about body positioning, and it's very difficult. So when you get in the air and you realize how hard it is to just make little movements, having the tunnel is amazing. And that's what makes this school so amazing, that you have the tunnel right next door. It's world class. When you watch the video, it's very hard to see if you're smiling or not, because you're thinking about a lot of things. But when you get back in and you actually watch the video and you see, yourself in that position, yeah, it's such an amazing feeling. I've tried to keep calm as much as I can and just enjoy the week, because I'm by myself and I'm just sort of learning and learning and learning. It's one of the best things I've done in a long time.